this is something that I learned in the process of making Crypto Cartel, is that there are a ton of people just sitting out there on the internet who are waiting for, people like you, Mark, people like me, people who actually want to do something creative. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts about living in the time that we do, because of the internet, because of all the different resources, whether it's crowdfunding, whether it's just the proliferation of technology, the ability to film and edit on just about anything. You can make a feature film with the iPhone nowadays, which is kind of crazy. I mean, the quality is that good and the resources are that abundant that just about anyone can be at least a decent filmmaker, which is, I think that's the other point too. Again, film school is not the end all be all, is I think one of the other things I was just trying to get at. And for those of you out there who are considering creative careers, want to go do something like film school, don't let that be the end, like the one thing that, I have to go to film school. If I don't go to film school, I won't be a filmmaker. That's not necessarily true. It's creativity. And I think what it's kind of connected to, like even like what you're trying to do with I Feel Attacked, it's an entrepreneurial effort in the bigger scheme of things. And I think ultimately, just so long as you're doing something to keep that creativity going, I think that's one more step closer to what you're trying to become.
I think you're absolutely right, and I'm gonna tell you a story that is not mine. And I'm sure he's okay with me telling this. Maybe he's not. Sue me if you don't want. But a friend of mine is Phil Rinda, and Phil Rinda, he won an Emmy at 25. He's an animator.
Oh, cool.
He worked on Venture Brothers, Adventure Time, Adventures of Bob and Mindy. He did Gravity Falls. What is he doing now? He did Loud House. Basically, like, if there's a big animation project, like, he worked on it at some point. And it was really funny. He really wanted to get into, in high school, he really wanted to get into Cal Arts. And he didn't get in. He just didn't get into Cal Arts. And he had to like figure, he always wanted to be an animator. He always wanted to do this. And he just didn't get into the school animators go to, and he like kind of, I don't exactly know what he thought at the time, but like feels bad. It felt very bad. Mm-hmm. But he kept at the grind. He kept at it. He figured out his own way to do it. And then less than, I think 10 years later, like to the day, maybe it was a little longer, but Cal Arts is asking him to go and give speeches and keynote addresses. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like the school that rejected him 10 years later is trying to glom off of his success.
Right.
And so it's just like, just because, you think that to be a filmmaker, you need to go to USC, like a lot of the people who went to USC now and who are filmmakers aren't making the best films. Like, that's all I'm saying.
Like there's a really good point within that. Something I've sort of come to learn over the past year and a half. It just, because I'm sure you can identify, I'm sure there's a lot you and I have in common, a lot of interests that we have that we probably share. But I was really big into the MCU films when they first came out. I still pretty much am. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not, but I just feel like we're getting close to jumping the shark with the content. It's just feeling so uber corporate and just so played out, that I'm just worried that we're like getting closer and closer to that one film. We're like, I think we've seen enough here. And I feel like that's basically what a lot of the USC film students end up doing. Not to say what they're doing isn't necessarily good. I guess it's more so a criticism of the studios nowadays with the content that they churn out, because I just worry that they don't really think through the content that they're putting out nowadays, and that's just a concern that I have. Yeah, with everything that we've seen so far.
And that's a fair criticism. I think that if you want to work in film, then going to USC is probably, or if you want to be a director or whatever, be the closest thing to a director you can, then going to USC is probably your easiest way to do that. But if you want to be an artist and make really good films,
right? Yes,
USC is probably not going to be the best thing for you. I mean, maybe it is. There are certainly people who will prove me wrong, and someone listening to this is going to give me some example of some recent USC grad, that I'm not thinking of. What's his name? Spielberg doesn't count. His two thesis films were Amistad and Schindler's List. I don't know if you knew that. He never finished film school, so like he went back in the 90s and went, and so his thesis films, like the things he submitted, were Schindler's List and Amistad.
It's very, I never knew that. No, but it's really funny you bring him up because he's another person who is a really good example of, again, he applied to USC twice, didn't get in. Yeah, we went to Long Beach, Cal State Long Beach's film program and did that. But then again, he just was a trailblazer, did his own thing, and it was really obviously very successful. But they have buildings named after him, kind of like,
Right.
kind of, yeah, they're just totally simping off of him, trying to make as much money as possible. So,
Yeah, which is, you know, and that's the sort of thing. And I think that it's really hard. It was really hard for me to learn this too. Is like, you're not Steven Spielberg.
mm-hmm.
You know what I
Right.
mean? But just because you're not Steven Spielberg doesn't mean you don't have incredible things to offer and do.
Which I would say is a
But,
great
like,
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, right. But figuring that out is a huge part. If you're going to be creative or work in the field or do whatever, you're going to have that moment
Mhm.
where you're like, oh shit, I'm not as good as this other person who's my same age doing this thing. And I will never succeed the way that this person's doing it because
Right.
they're just better at it than I am. And ironically, I think that's one of the best uses of going to school for the thing you want. Because
Right.
when you see people who are just like preternaturally better than you are,
Mhm.
A, you get to learn from them. But
Yes.
B, you also get this idea of like, oh, that's what it takes to do this thing.